Hey YouTube. Hey YouTube, testing. Testing, 1, 2, 3. One, two, three. Hey Cobweb Caverns. How's the audio? Hey HC Aqua. Welcome to the stream. Some of you guys may have noticed that I was absent last week. We had a death in the immediate family. Thanks, Cobwebs. And I just didn't have it in me to do a live stream while we were dealing with all that. Hey Daryl Dimer, welcome to the stream. It looks like I'm running up against Mark Shrimp, and I could easily tell you guys to go watch Mark's live streams. Mark does a great job. Mark Shrimp Tanks. Anybody that thanks, Cobwebs and HC Aqua. Yeah, it's been kind of rough. I once again have no real axe to grind this week. I do have some news on the Go Wild Peru front. Michael Barber did bring me fish back, and I should be getting a small order of blue tetras, and I'm assuming it's going to be like 7 of them. I think he probably brought them back in his luggage, but it may be a full shipment and I just don't realize it. You know, it may be 20 or 30 or who knows, 50. I don't know, but my guess is, and Michael's been very not forthcoming about exactly what he brought me other than to say blue tetras. And these are the tetras that are very much like the lined blue tetras that I have already, that I've got 3 of. But these are, oh gosh, the name escapes me right now, Trinocox or something, tetras that that we shipped almost 200 of to Washington, and they were all dead except for 7, and I think Dean still has the 7, but I'm going to get 7 or more of my own, and those should be coming in Tuesday, and I hope to do an unboxing. But I think it's critical to note that Michael Barber and Go Wild Peru, by extension, felt really bad about the situation that we ran into and understood that a lot of the fish that died were the tetras that I wanted, and so he is doing his best. Excuse me. He is doing his best to make it up to me, and it doesn't really matter to me what the size of the makeup is. It's just the idea that Michael Barber, out of the goodness of his heart and out of a honorable business sense, would see fit to try to send me something means the world to me. And I'd like to thank Michael Barber for whatever steps he had to go through to get those fish in the country and ship them to me. He's going to ship them on Monday, and I should have them by Tuesday. So at some point Tuesday, I'll probably be putting together a unboxing video and getting them in my 55 with the rest of my fish. Let's see, I should look this up. Excuse me, I'm looking something up here. I'm trying to figure out what the name of them is. And I don't see them there. Let's go to Go Wild Peru. And look up tetras in the photo section. Chasserins. Carcerins. I always have a lot of trouble pronouncing that name. Tittycharax tembopatenesis. Tittycharax. Tytochararax. Tambopatenesis. And they are quite the remarkably colored fish. They are really highly iridescent blue, depending on which way the sun hits them. And they have some extremely interesting breeding techniques that they use. The female will clasp her pelvic fins together into a cup and hold the egg, a fertilized egg, and then attach it to a marginal plant that has leaves hanging in the water, and then attach that egg to those leaves hanging in the water, and that's where the eggs hatch. So I'm going to have to do some MacGyvering to set up such a situation. I don't have a lot of light on my tank, so I'm going to have to come up with some kind of plant that I can keep alive and have hang down into the water for those fish to be able to breed. They when they're stressed, like when we caught them and put them in our buckets, they had almost no coloration at all. They were just a very pale tetra. But as they stayed in the holding tanks in the fish room at Go Wild Peru Base, they started to develop their blue back again once they kind of got used to where they were and what was going on. And they have a remarkable color to them. Now, a lot of it depends on which way the light strikes them. So you might very well just see a sheen of blue on them, or you might see them in full blue colors. The picture that's on the Go Wild Peru's site is full blue, and I mean, you could see them, even though the water was a little bit murky, you could see them clearly in the water when they were flashing that full blue and they were in the sunlight. So I'm really excited to have those. I think Dean has 7 of them, but I think he said that he did not feel like that they were well enough to ship, that they had suffered so much gill burn in the shipping with all the deaths around them that they probably wouldn't make being shipped again. And so I'm really looking forward to getting some that are not damaged, that are healthy, and see if I can raise them. I have, I've got these emperor tetras, the black belt tetras, nigricinctus. I've got about a dozen of them, and then I've got 3 fish that look like a cross between the blue tetras and the nigricinctus, i.e. they've got a black line that runs the length of their body, and Dean and I both ended up with some of these. They look like Nigrosinkus, except the rest of their body is blue. They have no red fins, whereas the Nigrosinkus have several red fins. The males are much brighter than the females. But those fish, the ones that I've got, I really don't have a clear ID on them because there is a black line tetra, black spot tetra listed on the website, Go Wild Peru, but it doesn't really look exactly like these fish to my eye, and it didn't to Dean's eye either. And we've discussed this back and forth, trying to figure out exactly what we had. And anyway, I'm really excited to get even 7 of these blue tetras in, and hopefully try to set up a situation where they will breed. The black spot looking tetras, neither the blues nor the Nigrosinkus have gotten much larger than the Nigrosinkus have. And I'm feeding them regularly, and they highly relish being fed, and they're getting fat, probably too fat. I need to start skipping some feedings on them to keep them at a more nominal weight, probably. But I have yet to watch them go through any kind of breeding process. I've not seen anything that I recognize as breeding behaviors. I don't know whether they are a school breeder or whether they are just egg scatterers. And if they're egg scatterers, I'm not sure whether... okay, doll. Sorry, you got to jump up and know what you're doing. So it's going to be very interesting to me to get these fish and try to get them to a point where they can breed. I'm excited about it, and I'm effusively thankful to Michael Barber for going out of his way to make good on what turned out to be kind of a miserable situation for us. I think it's good for us to recognize that both Ian Fuller and Michael Barber are hobbyists like we are, on a much higher level, of course. Ian is a world-renowned expert in Corydoras, and Michael is an expert in several different kinds of species and types of fish, catfish and tetras among them. And I think it's important that we as hobbyists that are looking to have a business help us explore the wild in its pristine state, understand that this is not just a money-making proposition that Michael and Ian are running down there, that it is basically hobbyists that are helping other hobbyists expand their horizons in the sense of putting us in locations where wild fish are and allowing us to learn how to catch them and to study them and keep them. So it's, to me, it's a very happy ending in the sense that I feel like not only did we go through a bad situation, but that Go Wild Peru is doing something to rectify it. And so I'm highly satisfied with that. And that's 15 minutes of happy rant from me about getting some more fish from Peru. I'm not sure if you guys have any issues that you need to discuss or that you might want to ask questions about. I'm more than open to other topics. My mind's been pretty much on funerals and shocking deaths and that kind of stuff here the last week or so. So I've kind of been out of pocket on fish stuff. I haven't really watched a lot of people's videos. I've caught a couple, but mainly I've just been kind of dealing with family. Hey Joel, welcome to the stream, man. We are once again much ado of nothing here. I have no topic to really grind an axe on today. I'm not here. Let's do the 500 ways to be a better freshwater fish keeper. Let's see if we can find a handy dandy tip to talk about. Okay, 236, better fish buying. Should I buy all my breeding stock from the same outlet? When buying breeding stock, try to purchase males and females from different stores. This makes it less likely that the fish are from the same brood, perhaps brought in from a local hobbyist, and offspring will be less likely to suffer the effects of inbreeding. Be especially wary of species that easily reproduce and throw large broods, as these most often find their way from hobbyists into the stores. And I think that that's a good tip. It's a good tip in the sense that these fish are originally caught in the wild. They are caught in a certain amount of numbers, you know, hundreds or tens, and sometimes just a single pair. And they raise. Hey, Jeremy, welcome to the stream. You pay attention to the road, my friend. It is important that we not interbreed our stock on a regular basis. Fish are not quite like human beings. The inbreeding process is not quite as severe on fish as it is on human beings, in the sense of having serious effects from initial inbreeding. You know, say you only have 2 fish, they throw a brood of fry for you, and you raise up those fry and let them breed again, brother to sister. That initial breeding is not going to be fraught with danger, but by the same token, if you take the fry from that breeding and then breed them again, interbreed them again, then you're starting to get to a point where the inbreeding process is going to be affecting the quality. You'll get misshapen skeletons, you'll get defects, you'll get weird fin problems. You'll come up with some issues fairly quickly after generational inbreeding of the second or third time, where you will start to see defects in the fish that they're producing. And it's a really good idea after your first breeding to find someone else that has also bred a pair and either share with them, give them half of your fry and take half of their fry, and then that way they get a better breeding quality stock and you get a better breeding quality stock. You could take half of their fry, remove the males, keep the males and the females separate before they get to breeding age, and then throw females from your breeding line in with the males of that person's breeding line, and throw your females in with the males from that person's breeding line, vice versa. Split them up both ways and put them together so that you end up with assurances that you will have a good breeding line continuing. Anytime someone is doing hard work trying to breed a trait into a line of fish where they take two sports out of the same brood and breed them together and then get the best of those and breed them back to the original parent to create a line that will give them the traits that they were breeding for. Then after they have bred them back to the original parent, it is very wise, even if you're working very hard at a line, to get wild caught or other stock and breed back into that regular stock, and then take the sports that show the color variant that you're looking for out of that breeding and use those to start your true breeding line. And so if you were to just take two fish that both showed traits, breed them together, and then continually breed together the fry that came from that brood and then from the fry that came from the F2 brood together, you would immediately, by the third generation, start seeing the signs of poor breeding lines, poor bloodlines. And so it's always a good idea to cross back to healthy, normal stock and then take the fry from that show the traits that you want, to then use that as your true beginning of your breeding line. So it pretty much takes 3 to 4 generations to actually start a line, to actually create a true line. And it's done by breeding together fry that are from the same brood that show a trait that you like, you know, like the blue Dempseys. If you were to get 2 Dempseys that showed the electric blue quality, a male and a female, out of one single brood, and then bred those 2 together and took their fry, the ones that you liked the best, that had the most of the coloration and genetics that you wanted, and breed it back to the original mother, a male, and breed it back to the original mother, and then take those fry from that breeding. This is F3 bred back into F1, and then take the fry from that breeding and breed them back into other normal stock, and take the fry from those fish unions and use them as the beginning. Cull away the ones that don't have the qualities that you want, because you're going to get a mixture. You may only get a quarter of the fry showing the traits that you want to express. But anyway, if you do all those steps in the breeding line process, then you have a true beginning stock for a breeding line that will give you pretty good Terry's Tropical Tanks says, love you, Dwayne, but that was a bad example. Electric blue Jack Dempsey times electric blue Jack Dempsey is considered fatal. Now, maybe I am giving you a bad example. I was just using that as a trait that Terry, thank you for correcting me and catching my error. I guess it is just a bad example for those. So using an electric blue and breeding it with an electric blue gives you such bad stock that it is fatal to begin with. Hey, John Williams, thanks for dropping by. Okay, then maybe you should listen to what Terry's telling you. He's more up to date on breeding electric blue Jack Dempseys than I am, and I probably knew this, but just didn't. Electric times electric could be shocking results. Yeah, well, you might get very, very poorly developed fish. He says is considered fatal, then that's probably the truth. So perhaps with the electric blue, you have to breed them back to normal stock every time, and that's true. I would stand corrected on that. That was a poor example for me to give. It's just the first one that came up in my head. But anytime you are breeding fish, it's always better off to have fresh bloodlines to add to your stock. Bloodlines that you know come from somewhere else. You know, usually if you get wild caught fish, you can pretty well consider them. Yeah, cobwebs, it's probably a needed joke. I obviously goofed up there. I am not infallible. Anyway, my point was from the tip from the 500 freshwater fish keeping book was to try to get stock that is not from the brood that you got your stock from to breed together so that you don't end up with inbreeding. And yes, inbreeding fish can be quote quote fatal. It's hard sometimes when you're dealing with a sport. You need to breed normal looking jacks that carry the EB gene. Right, I would agree with that. I mean, that's kind of what I was trying to say, that in a brood carrying the gene, you're going to get some fish that don't express the gene outwardly, that still carry the gene, and you're going to get some fish that both carry and express the gene, like 25% maybe of them will both carry and express the gene outwardly, and that you would need to breed those back to normal looking Jack Dempseys. The reason I fell back on using Jack Dempseys is because basically in the 70s I was trying to breed electric blue Dempseys. I just didn't know what that was. There was nothing to that. John Williams wants to know, has anybody seen or heard from Jenny at Solid Gold Aquatics? I don't follow her regularly, John. In fact, I haven't seen anything in quite a while. But I do know that she went through some pretty terrible experiences with diseases killing all of her goldfish stock. And she may have reached the point where she just didn't feel like it was worth it to keep pushing in that direction. The last video I saw of hers was was them setting up that wall of tanks, and I guess I either haven't looked for a while. And Cobweb says, John, she posted on Facebook a while back that she wasn't going to be about for a while. No real reason given. This was August time. Okay, DPK Fish, welcome to the stream, man. And he asked, my biggest curiosity is there is not much of info available out there how many chemicals we encounter out of our tap that affect our fish and are not mentioned. DPK, you can find tons of articles about that if you really dig. If you dig into scientific journals, if you dig into textbooks on that very topic, you will find a ton of information. Now, it is not really slanted towards fish keepers. Basically, it's mostly slanted towards regulations for drinking water and those sorts of things. But there are tons of trace elements that cannot be removed from our water supply and that are in such minute quantities that for drinking water it's okay. Just think about all the people that are taking medications and then peeing into the wastewater system, and that wastewater, although it is treated, it is not deionized and RO treated, and therefore there are still a lot of those medications that are in minor trace elements, 0.002 per million, that kind of trace elements. DPK Fish says, because I read fluoride destroys fish gills. And yes, it does. But that's why a great many of us use RO water and add the deionization chamber on the end of that RO water, because reverse osmosis is just a very tiny 1 micron filtration membrane that forces everything larger than 1 micron to be pushed back and not go through. But there still are trace minerals, trace heavy metals, and trace medications and pesticides that are so small that they make it through that membrane, and those are supposed to be taken care of in the deionization chamber of an RODI setup. And so there are a lot of people that that have basically given up on their local water supply company, their city water, that they have basically given up and no longer trust it. I think you can use Lucas as a perfect example of that. He was just treating his tap water and using it and started running into serious issues and fish loss, and felt like that there was a good chance that it was the variables in the tap water that were causing issues for him. And he has gone to RODI water exclusively. So a lot of people with municipalities that are constantly changing the way they treat. DPK says, I am the same way. I lost most of my fish caused by my city water. That's one of the reasons why I always caution people to keep a TDS meter handy, and every time they do a water change, to test their tap water, just so that they can make sure that there is nothing way out of line. Cobweb Caverns wants to know what everyone else's other hobbies are. If you have any time for others. I build scale models and am into steampunk, as you might be able to see by my pic. My other hobbies are writing, playing video games, camera stuff has become a hobby for me. Just trying to learn how to use the darn thing to get the needed images and stuff that I need for my YouTube channel. Trying to get a little better at producing videos and that sort of thing. I used to have a lot more hobbies back when I had more energy and more time to invest in them, in the sense that these days I'm pretty beat down and just don't have a whole lot of energy. Between my frozen shoulder and my back, it's kind of hard for me to have a whole lot of energy. ATM Aquatics, welcome to the stream. Hey, down the wormhole, welcome to the stream. Yeah, I was gone last week. We had a death in the close family. DPK says, I agree, my TDS fluctuates a lot during changes of season. Yeah, it's fluctuation is not bad. It's when it goes wildly one way or the other. 35 millimeter photography, says John Williams. Real film. A lot of people that cut their teeth on real film developing back in the day are really glad for digital photography, so that they don't have to breathe all those chemicals and all that sort of stuff. Terry has lost his polishing filter somewhere. Well, usually a polishing filter is not too hard to replace. But if it's in a tank somewhere, you probably need to get it out. Cobwebs has a stash of 35 millimeter film stored in his fridge. I guess that's better than live bloodworm cultures or blackworm cultures as far as storing things in the refrigerator. But yeah, you could take up a lot of space in a refrigerator with 35 millimeter film. I'm glad I don't have to go through the post-production process of all those chemicals. Terry wants to put some carbon in it to remove some meth blue. Yeah. I'm still kind of reeling from Eric Bodrock's admonition to Lucas in that stream that Lucas did where he was at the Bodrock's house. And Eric Bodrock said that basically all methyl blue did was dim the lights. You put enough methyl blue in the water, and that basically it just cuts down on the amount of light getting to the eggs, and they don't fungus as readily that way. You could basically do the same thing by covering the tank and blocking out most of the sunlight. Every time I think of methyl blue now, I have to disengage my brain for a minute and think about that. Think about whether what I'm using it for is actually just basically dimming the lights. But it's good that people like Eric Bodrock are around to to wake us up, to shake up our paradigm, because I've used methyl blue since the 70s, and I always thought it was a chemical thing. Cobweb says, well, it's that and beer in the fridge and bloodworms, Daphenia, in the freezer. Maybe some food for me in there as well. Yeah, you better keep food in there. You gotta eat. Hey, Raccoon Creek Aquatics, welcome to the stream. We are basically talking about nothing today again. Terry's Tropicals caught me in a huge error talking about breeding electric blue jacks to electric blue jacks. We were talking about the tip in the book that I've been snatching tips out of. Terry asked, what does Eric say about malachite green? Well, I'm going to tell you that a full dose of malachite green definitely darkens the water. But I know malachite green has some chemical properties to it as well. Copper. Yeah, it's copper. I suppose you could do the same thing as malachite green by flipping a copper penny in the tank. And by the way, those of us that kept really large cichlids in the 70s and had nothing to do basically with invertebrates, that's something that we did a lot, was when we'd pour our gravel in, we'd flip an old copper penny in there. Not a new shiny one, an older one that's got some of the copper showing. Yeah, you do have to be careful with malachite green with loaches. Non-scale fish have a hard time dealing with copper. You'll also find that invertebrates have a very hard time dealing with copper. Snails, shrimp, that sort of thing will have a hard time dealing with copper. Now the penny in the tank will keep down things like hydra and that sort of stuff. So Jeremy gives us a tip that says other than utilizing formaldehyde solution and or methyl blue, is utilizing 3% hydrogen peroxide. These products cause oftentimes a calcification effect to the embryo. Okay. Jeremy, are you talking about the malachite green and the methyl blue cause calcification? Or are you talking about using formaldehyde or a hydrogen peroxide solution causing calcification? Can always count on Jeremy to catch me in errors. That's a good thing. And his answer is yes. Oh, methyl blue does. So methyl blue is doing far more than just darkening the water. I always thought that it did, that any dye has a chemical property of some sort, a mineral property of some sort working. So, way back when, that's mostly what we had for medication were dyes, methyl blue, malachite green. There were a couple of others too, and their names are escaping me right now. Jeremy could write a novel, and of course, Jeremy, we're all waiting for your novel to come out. I'd like to proofread it when you get it done and get a galley copy that's signed. Terry says, I've used HP on angel eggs with good success. Well, Jeremy, I'm just telling you how much I look forward to your to your book, your novel when it comes out. I know you well enough to expect great things from such a book. I'm sure it'll be a huge headache to write. It will be far more of an issue than you ever dreamed possible when you start actually trying to get it all down and get it collated and get it under 80 million words. You know, it's kind of hard to cut down and to get down to the point where something like that is concise enough to fit inside of 1 to 10 volumes. DPK says, I have used iodine to prevent fungus in fish eggs with decent success. Cobweb Caverns wonders HP. Surely you can't mean the sauce. And surely it's not the sauce. I have never used iodine as a treatment in a fish tank, except for one time when I had some ataloxyls, or however you say that name, the juvenile form of salamanders, and I was told that if I put a few drops of iodine in the tank with them, that they would go ahead and finish the change and become salamanders. Hey, Mob Guppy, welcome to the stream. I almost said welcome to the tank. Hydrogen peroxide cobwebs. It's called betadine iodine, the correct name. Maybe that's a more useful version. But the iodine that I put in the tank with my my ataloxyls or atoxyls, or however you say that name, did work. They did change into salamanders. And I ended up letting them go because I wasn't really clear on what they required after that point, whether I still had to have water or whether they just needed a tank full of moss or what it was they were going to eat. That was beyond my ability to figure out. I basically was so interested to see the change take place that I didn't really think ahead. Cobweb says, dough, of course. You know that's really not used that much at all in the UK. Well, Cobwebs, I think that hydrogen peroxide is an excellent tool in a fish keeper's arsenal. You can use it to kill blackbeard algae. You can use it to kill blue-green algae. It requires a lot of injections into the substrata where the blue-green algae is. Of course, we know that blue-green algae is not really algae at all. A54 Punchy, welcome to the stream. I really think that there are a lot of good uses for hydrogen peroxide, one of which is, of course, in case of power outage, you can peel some potatoes, cut them into slivers or wedges, throw them in a container that has a cork that you can put a air line outlet on, and you can hook an air line to the top of that cork and put an air stone on it and pour some hydrogen peroxide in that bottle of those potato slices, and you will be producing pure oxygen out of your air stone. Now, it won't last that long, but it could well be the difference between your fish surviving a power outage and them not surviving. So those are the kinds of things that are handy to be able to do in a situation where you're suddenly faced. Cobweb Cavern says, I might be alone in this, but I really don't mind blackbeard algae. I think it looks okay. Other than cleaning glass, I just leave algae well enough alone. If your blackbeard algae is not out of control, if it's just maybe on one plant or maybe on one piece of wood or one rock, then yeah, you can live with it. It's not that hideous. I've got a rock that has some blackbeard algae on it that's in my my Peru fish tank, and I was interested to see whether the plecos, when they got hungry, would try to eat it, and they have not. I think they ate all the regular algae from around it, but they have not eaten the actual blackbeard algae. So yeah, I can see where you could be okay with it. But blackbeard algae is want to take over a tank. It will sometimes go wild and start growing over every plant and every rock, and it doesn't usually get in the substrate for me, but it will get on all the rocks, all the wood, and all the plants sometimes. And that's a case where it's better off to kill it than it is to try to deal with it. DPK Fish says, I heard hydrogen peroxide and bleach produces pure oxygen and vinegar, and with baking soda makes pure CO2. Yeah, there's a lot of different chemical reactions that you can get out of a bottle of hydrogen peroxide by adding something to it. So yeah, I think hydrogen peroxide is a really handy way, and you can use it to fight fungus. It will kill molds. It's a pretty useful, and that's in the proper percentages. Hydrogen peroxide at a very high percent is deadly. It'll kill everything. It's caustic as all get out. It'll eat metals. It's pretty tough stuff when it's in a very high concentration. So that's why you end up with 3% or 12% or something like that. But it is a very useful product for fish keepers to keep on hand, because there's a lot of Cobweb says SAE is the only fish I know that likes to chow down on blackbeard. Yeah. Most fish will graze on it because you will get fauna, microfauna in a tank, and it will live on the blackbeard algae as it will live on all the other surfaces. DPK says same with cornmeal. It will kill most algae, but it takes longer to kill blackbeard. Cornmeal, huh? That's a new one on me.
Well, how do you use it?
My wife is asking in the background, how do you use cornmeal to kill algae? Surely it's going to make a huge mess in a tank if you just add it. Do you drain the tank and shake dry cornmeal over top of the algae? Is that what you're talking about? I've got to admit, you got me with something I know nothing about. Candy and Pam are talking about let's see, what kind of fish are they talking about? Drape fins. Plopped and dropped the drape fins. Well, Candy, you'll have to keep us up to date about DPK says it's a very old method. You put it in a pantyhose.
Yeah.
I guess you put it in a pantyhose and just stick it in the area where the algae is. I gotta admit, DPK, you got me on that. Let it soak for one day and it will spread all over. It might make the water cloudy for a day, but the TGE, it will clear up. Then it will clear up, I guess. Yeah, that's one I have never heard of. I gotta admit. It's very rare that someone gives me an old school tip that I've never heard of before. But that one is news to me. That might be a Euro tip. It never made it to the States. But DPK, I can strongly recommend that you use hydrogen peroxide for a lot of things. And it's worth going out and buying a medium to large bottle. Cobweb says, okay, Google says cornmeal is just ground down dried maize. How would that do anything towards killing algae? Yeah, now, Pam, I have heard of the barley straw. That you can take a bale of barley straw and throw it into a pond that has algae problems. That will, and I assume that it's exactly what Deep Carlos there is saying. It does a reaction with the organics in the tank and produces CO2, which kills algae. But I would want to really closely monitor what was going on in my tank using a method like that. I would probably be water testing it every day to make sure that I wasn't getting a huge bacteria bloom that was creating ammonia spikes or something on that order. Hey Laura, welcome to the stream. Basically, Laura, we've been talking about weird little tips and uses. That kind of seems to be the order of the day. And Cobweb's Cavern stumped me by talking about using, or DPK stumped me by talking about using cornmeal in a pair of pantyhose to kill algae or blackbeard. DPK says most fish will eat it too. Great for their gut. Yeah, I'm. That makes sense that a lot of fish would eat it. All right, guys. Laura got here just basically for the very end of the show. Once again, I apologize for missing last week. It was a issue beyond our control, and I just really wasn't. Hey, Oddball Aquatics, welcome to the stream. You got here just in time to hear me say it's time to leave you. I've been tempted here lately to start singing Jack LaLanne's "It's Time to Leave You" every time. It's time to leave you. When I was a kid, my mom would be watching the Jack LaLanne exercise program, and I would always hear that song. I thought that was great. All right, guys. I hope you have a good rest of the weekend. We'll be here next week, Laura. You can always come then. Yeah, I started at quarter till this week, and you can watch the replay. It is free for the watching. Thank you. Thank you guys for stopping by and spending a little bit of your time listening to me, who once again today produced a great gaffe talking about breeding electric blue Dempseys with electric blue Dempseys. And I'm grateful that someone caught me in that error. All right, guys. You have a good rest of the weekend and week. I hope all is well with your fish.